Hello all, welcome to Narayana IAS Academy. This is Sureka Bhaskar presenting to you the daily news analysis. For today's discussion, we've picked up a number of articles from The Hindu and the Indian Express which are both important and relevant for the UPSC CSE examination. Now, let us have a look at the topics one by one. The first article for discussion that has been taken up today is from page number 15 of the Indian Express, the escalation in West Asia. So this particular article talks about the recent escalation in the Israel-Hezbollah conflict, including the recent attack of the Hezbollah leaders in Lebanon, and this also talks about the wider perspective and dimension on how this particular conflict can have implications on countries like India. Moving forward, the second article has been picked up from page number 11 of The Hindu, Should Children Be Barred from Social Media? As the title suggests, this particular article discusses about the debate around whether children should be barred or banned from social media, particularly with respect to the recent announcement made by the Australian government. And it also talks about wider perspective and dimensions on the age limits, the parental responsibility, the platform accountability, as well as online safety. The third article for the day has been picked up from page number 1 of the Indian Express, FATF on India, Effective Anti-Money Laundering System, Low Prosecution. So this particular article discusses about the recent study or the recent report that has been released by the FATF that evaluates India's anti-money laundering system and also discusses about its strengths and gives recommendations on the areas of improvement, particularly with respect to money laundering, the financial monitoring, as well as prosecution. The fourth article has been picked up from Science section of The Hindu, How Kerala has reduced mortality from amoebic meningoencephalitis. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about this particular disease of PAM, that is nothing but primary amoebic meningoencephalitis, which is primarily caused by the brain-eating amoeba. The last article for the day has been picked up from page number 10 of the Indian Express. Ahead of the Amur falcon's arrival, Manipur bans their hunting. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about this particular species, that is Amur falcon, and also we'll be talking about its unique characteristic features, the habitat, the geographical location or the distribution, the conservation status, the threats, and so on. And towards the end of the session, we will be discussing few prelims as well as mains practice questions. And now let us get into the discussion. The first article that we've actually picked up today for discussion is a very interesting topic, that is the escalation in West Asia. So we need to understand that this political or geopolitical landscape of West Asia has been in news too much because it has always been in hotspot because of some kind of crisis in terms of airstrikes, in terms of war, etc. Okay. So in this particular article, we will be discussing about the Israel-Hezbollah conflict, as also we'll be discussing about the larger perspective, that is the Israel-Palestine conflict, because of which the recent war or the recent chaotic situation has actually happened there, as well as the geopolitical dynamics in West Asia becomes very important. And also, it is very important for us to understand any kind of geopolitical dynamics or situation that arises anywhere across the world, whether it is between Russia and Ukraine, whether it is between Israel or Palestine, whether it is between the United States and Iran. Here what is important is what is India's stance and what will be the implications on countries, particularly with respect to India, because India actually has an inclination with respect to imports, exports, etc. on these particular regions. So that is majorly important for our examination. So in this particular topic, it can be mapped to GS paper 2 for your mains examination, specifically under effect of policies and politics of developed and developing countries on India's interest, as well as Indian diaspora who live there become very important. Now moving forward, it is always important for us to map a topic with respect to that of the previous year questions. So similarly, in 2018, there has been a question in the mains examination with respect to the kind of relations that India shares with that of Israel. So if you have to know what is the kind of relation India shares with that of Israel, it's also important for us to know what is India's stand on the Israel-Palestine conflict. Whether India actually recognizes Israel as a political entity or it actually recognizes Palestine as an entity. So for this, you need to know the conflict between Israel and Palestine, where you need to have a deeper understanding of the historical war as well as the political aspects. Okay. So Moving forward, now let us understand what this particular article is talking about. So there have been recent attacks on the Hezbollah leaders who actually are, living there in Lebanon. This marks a new phase in Israel's regional conflict, potentially drawing Iran and US into this particular conflict. Here you need to understand that US is a supporter of Israel. And here if you see, Iran is the supporter of Hezbollah. So ultimately what happens? It is US versus Iran, and this is actually called as the proxy war. In case US actually wants to, attack Iran, it will not directly do so, but it will do with respect to that of Iran attacking Hezbollah. Okay, so this is called as proxy war, when the war is actually carried out for a particular, set of people by another set of people. So that is what is called as the proxy war. For this, let us understand what and who are these Hezbollahs and which are the countries actually supporting them. So Hezbollah is nothing but it is a Shia Islamic political party. So here also it is important for you to understand what are these religious entities of Shia and Sunnis, which are the Sunni dominated regions, which are the Shia dominated regions, and how do they actually differ ideologically with respect to that of religion is very, very important. So if you see Hezbollah, which is in news, where the Israel people have actually attacked the Hezbollah leaders, is nothing but it is a Shia Islamic political party and a militant organization which is actually based in Lebanon. Okay, so this particular Hezbollah, this was actually formed in 1982. Why was it formed? Because of the Israel's invasion of Lebanon. Okay, and also, Lebanese actually wanted to counter attack them. So as a response to counter the Israeli forces and also to repel their occupation with support from that of Iran. So basically here our takeaway is that Iran actually supports Hezbollah. So this is what we need to understand. And since the formation of this particular political party, Hezbollah has been involved in various conflicts, including the Israel-Lebanon conflict, as well as the Syrian civil war, and so on. Okay, for this here you need to have a good stand on your history. So now let us actually understand how and what has been the chronology of Israel's invasion of Lebanon in 1982. So Israel's invasion into Lebanon, so if you actually look at this map, this particular region, if you see, this is Lebanon, okay? And this is actually Israel, and here you have the West Bank, and here you have Jerusalem, and here adjacent areas are Syria, Jordan, Golan Heights, etc. And this particular map is also very important, as questions appear in your MCQs, okay? So here, Israel's invasion of Lebanon in 1982 is a part of the broader Israel-Palestinian conflict. So where does this Israel-Palestinian conflict actually occur? It actually dates back to the Balfour Declaration of the British 1926-1927, where they said that the Jews from Israel actually can come over and they can actually settle in certain parts of the Palestine, where Palestine was actually occupied by the Arabs. Okay, so this eventually went to the expansion of the Jews who entered into the Palestine, eventually leading to the Israel-Palestine conflict. So this is what it is. So Israel's invasion of Lebanon in 1982 is a part of the broader Israel-Palestinian conflict, and this particular invasion actually aimed at countering the attacks from the Palestinian Liberation Organization, that is the PLO, which had been launching strikes on Israel from southern Lebanon. So here what are they saying is, here you had the PLO people, that is the Palestinian Liberation Organization, which actually launched attacks on Israel, because of which Israel had to invade Lebanon in the year 1982. As a result of this, Israel occupied a significant portion of southern Lebanon. Now, just a quick understanding of what was this Israel-Palestine conflict. The Israel-Palestine conflict is a long-standing territorial and it is a political dispute between the Jewish Israelis as well as the Arabs of Palestine. And this actually dates back to the early 20th century, primarily centered on the control of the land in the historical region of Palestine. That is what I actually gave reference to the Balfour Declaration in the year 1926-27. Now moving forward, it is important for us to understand what has been the history of conflict between Israel and Hezbollah right now, okay? So, the engagements between Israel as well as Hezbollah, I told you, This actually has support of Iran, and Israel has the support of the United States. So this is a part of the wider Iran-Israel proxy conflict. Okay, that is when Iran actually wants to attack Israel, it actually employs or deploys in the name of Hezbollah. So first, where did this conflict start is that it was in 1985 to the period of 2000. So this actually was called as the South Lebanon conflict. We saw, right? So this was actually the area of Lebanon, and this was the broader Israel region. So here Hezbollah actually had led the guerrilla warfare against the Israeli forces and the South Lebanon army supported by Israel. So in Lebanon you actually have two factions. One is actually the Hezbollah and the next one is the South Lebanon army. Okay, so they utilize the ambushes and rocket attacks, ultimately pressurizing Israel to withdraw from South Lebanon in 2000. Then what happened from the period of 2000 to 2006? This was actually called as the Sheba Farms conflict. So this was a low intensity border conflict was actually held. This is the border, and this was where somewhere the Sheba Farms was located. So it was a low intensity border conflict where the Hezbollah contested Israeli control of the Sheba Farms area, launching the sporadic attacks to assert their own claim, that is Lebanese claim, over the disputed territory. So now let us actually see what is this Sheba Farms. This area is located along the border of Lebanon and the Golan Heights, which is occupied by Israel. So here, if you look at this particular map, you can actually see this is the area of Israel. And this is actually the blue line, and here you have the Lebanon, and this is the area of this Sheba Farms, and here adjacent to it you have Syria, you have the occupied Golan Heights as well as other regions. Here it becomes very important, and it is West Bank as well, and this is the Gaza Strip. Okay, so here you need to have an atlas in hand so that you can actually, as you watch the video, it is important for you to actually see and spot these locations on the map. Now moving forward, after 2006, what had happened after the Sheba Farms conflict in 2006 Lebanon war, it was triggered by Hezbollah's capture of two Israeli soldiers, and here what happened, Israel launched a 34-day military campaign targeting this Hezbollah infrastructure, resulting in significant casualties and widespread destruction in Lebanon. And after that, what happened? This area had actually been characterized by ongoing tensions as well as lot of skirmishes and chaos over there. And so Hezbollah and Israel have actually engaged in reciprocal assaults across the southern Lebanese border since October 2023, beginning as a means to discourage Israeli actions in Gaza. Now moving forward, let us actually see. Here we've actually understood what has been, the historical engagement or the historical chaos or the conflict between Israel as well as Hezbollah. We've also seen that the proxy war between Iran and the other, the counterpart. And we've also seen what is the bigger backdrop of Israel-Palestine, conflict as a backdrop of the Balfour Declaration. Now we need to see what is the recent escalation in the Israel-Hezbollah conflict. If you see, a couple of days back, on September 17, 2024, thousands of handheld pagers which were belonging to the Hezbollah operatives, that is the leaders in Lebanon, exploded, which actually had killed a lot of people and had injured a lot of people as well. Okay, so it is actually alleged that it is an attack that has been, it is actually alleged that it is an attack that has been launched by Israel. So here, what would be the potential implications of the conflict? So here, first one, there will be regional escalation. That is, a full-scale war would draw in Iran. As I told you, it's a proxy war. It can involve Syria and Yemen, potentially leading to a broader Middle East conflict. Next is global oil supply. So this actually, given the proximity to the Strait of Hormuz, that is this entire area, and the Strait of Hormuz is actually located in proximity, this could severely impact the global oil prices as well as supply chains. Next one, the involvement of the United States would be there. That is, increased tensions might push the US into direct military engagement, especially if Iran retaliates against Israeli actions. Now moving forward, what would be the implications apart from, the global implications? What are the implications with respect to India is the most important aspect you need to know for your mains examination. So here, First one is energy security. So India, as you know, heavily relies on West Asian countries for the energy imports. Disruptions in the oil supply could directly affect India's energy security. And historically, if you see, West Asia has been a major source of crude oil for India, and it actually accounts for more than 80% of the country's total imports. Next, if you see, there are also concerns and impacts on the diaspora who actually live there. So, over 9 million Indian citizens work in this particular region, and any kind of escalation of conflict could pose serious risk to their safety as well as livelihoods. Next one is Diplomatic Balancing Act. Here, India maintains a strong relations with both Israel as well as the key Arab states, as we know, because we actually follow a policy of non-inclination and also de-hyphenation. We actually do not support any one particular party, but we are actually very cordial with respect to that of our interests, okay? So, including Iran, we actually have a cordial relationship, and any escalation would complicate India's diplomatic efforts in order to maintain neutrality as well as strategic partnerships. And also, there will be a severe strain on the economic impact or the economic relations that we actually have with the Middle Eastern regions. So, rising crude oil prices can be there, and of course, geopolitical instability. So, this can actually lead to a lot of inflation affecting India's economic growth as well as the fiscal policies. The next article that we'll be discussing about is, should children be barred from social media? So, as the topic actually seems very simple, we need to discuss a lot of social and society angle, both with respect to that of the children perspective, how does it actually hinder their privacy, and also we'll be looking at the parental perspective. And also there is one more dimension that is actually given here. What is the dimension of online safety, as well as what is the accountability that a particular social media platform would actually give? So, all these things we'll actually discuss. So, in this particular article, we are going to discuss about the impact of social media on children, particularly what will be the negative impact, and then what is the importance of having digital literacy, especially among the parents, in order to monitor the children, and also how is it going to affect the privacy of the child. And this particular topic becomes very, very important under GS Paper 2, Vulnerable Sections of the Society, for your mains examination. Now, moving forward, there has already been a question on social media with respect to that of the UPSC Mains Examination 2016. So, social media on the elders, social media on terrorism, social media on the youth, the children, the ill effects, all this becomes very, very important specifically for your mains examination. Now, moving forward, it is important for us to understand what this article is discussing about. So, the article actually discusses the ongoing debate surrounding the need for a minimum age to use the social media. Okay, so what happens is that there has been a recent announcement that actually came from the Australian Prime Minister, Mr. Anthony Albanese, and he actually says that there has to be a particular age for the children to actually enroll in social media like Instagram, Facebook, etc. Okay, so here let us see what are the debates surrounding the same. So, the key highlights of the recent announcement and the debates around the same include, first one, there has actually been an observation of an increased online activity specifically after the COVID pandemic, okay? And what are all the parental concerns that we'll also see. So, post the pandemic, there has been a significant rise in children's online activity because, the classes itself actually started commencing online. Next, the push for restrictions, that is, you can restrict them, but it primarily comes from the concerned parents who fear the potential harms of social media on the young users. Next is, however, an outright ban, that is, if you totally refrain the child from the social media platform, this may not solve the issue of the child safety online. Next one, instead of this, what the article says is, there is a need to hold the tech companies, that is, whichever platform is actually providing you that social media app or something, that has to be accountable for creating safer, more responsible digital spaces for the younger audiences. So, this is one dimension that was discussed in the article. The second one is, it talks about the challenges of enforcing the age restrictions. So, As you know, there are a lot of practical difficulties that actually come with restricting the age of the children who have to be involved in social media. Okay, so in this digital realm where everything is actually becoming digital, children can often find ways to circumvent the barriers. Okay, obviously when there is a restriction, we actually try to circumvent that restriction and move across, so making bans less effective. For example, there was recent cases in South Korea where South Korea attempted to regulate the online gaming. What happened is that theft actually became a bigger problem after introducing the gaming curfew for the minors. So that is also a concern. Next concern it actually talks about, that is, this article talks about, is it talks about what is the kind of burden it actually creates on the parents of these children. And there are also specific concerns on low literacy levels, particularly in countries like India. Okay, and also there is a term called as sharenting, which is actually discussed in this article. So let us see, there is a huge burden placed on the parents to regulate the children's online activity. This challenge is particularly amplified in countries like India where digital literacy levels are relatively low, and also many parents do not have the necessary skills or the knowledge to guide their children in safe online practices. Thereby, it makes the entire practice difficult to enforce the age restrictions or monitor the children's use of technology effectively. Then I told you the practice of sharenting, right? Where the parents tend to, when they use social media, they tend to unintentionally share the, information about the children online, and this actually compromises the privacy of the child. Okay. Now, it is important for us to understand what are the ill effects of social media on children. Let's quickly run through one by one. The first is mental health issues. So, research indicates that children using social media are more prone to feelings of sadness. They have anxiety. It may even lead to suicide, okay? Loneliness, and in extreme cases may experience thought of self-harm and even suicide, as I told you. So, here it is always, very important to substantiate your answers with examples. So when you're talking about mental health issues, you need to think about, has there been any real life incident that had actually happened? So here you can quote example of, in 2017, if you see, there was this, Blue Whale Challenge. This was an online game, okay? And this actually took away lives of so many youngsters, especially the boys in the state of Tamil Nadu. Now moving forward, next one is exposure to political manipulation. That is, social media can be a platform for spreading, the political propaganda, sometimes right, many times wrong, and often targeting young minds in order to manipulate their opinions for political gain. For example, again, there was actually Chennai water crisis that actually took place. So here all my examples are actually taken from the state of Tamil Nadu. You can actually take from the state you belong to, or any other, to diversify the examples, you can actually take one case from across different states as well, okay? So here, during the Chennai water crisis in 2019, what happened? Social media was actually flooded with politically motivated, content, and this actually had spread a lot of false information to the public and, about the state government and the way of them actually handling the situation. So this is one such example of exposure to political manipulation. The third one is spread of misinformation, okay? So, the vast reach of social media, especially WhatsApp, okay, this actually allows the intentional spread of fake news, which can actually lead to a lot of fear, a lot of confusion and instability in the minds of the children and the society at large. So over here, there were actually a lot of, false information about child abduction gangs, okay, in the state of Tamil Nadu in 2018. And this actually created a lot of ruckus, not only in the minds of children, but also incited the fear as well as, uncertainty in the minds of parents. Next one is facilitation of illegal activities. So here social media has unfortunately become a breeding ground for illegal activities like trafficking of children, exploitation of children, bullying of children and drug trafficking, exposing these, children to dangers, okay? And also you can actually see the next one, that is they are actually diverted from education. So for example, if you see in 2019, TikTok actually came under fire in Tamil Nadu when it was actually found that it was a platform which is used to generate a lot of inappropriate content, okay, including videos that actually showed a lot of violence, as well as it actually showed a lot of exploitation. And then they were, a lot of minors were actually involved because TikTok was a fame, in 2019. And then what happened? The Madras High Court even temporarily banned TikTok, okay, over the concerns that it was actually creating harmful impact on the children. And then distraction for education, that during the 2020 lockdown, many students actually, they succumbed to addiction of this, gaming, that is PUBG gaming and all. So social media serves as a significant distraction for children, diverting their focus from their academics and negatively impacts their educational progress as well as future career prospects. Next, if you see, there are privacy violations. First, I actually discussed with you something called as the sharenting, and also children's personal information is often at risk on social media platforms, which can lead to privacy breaches and exploitation. Next, increased risk of financial scams. There is a lot of cyber frauds that actually happen. So that is, children are vulnerable in order to falling prey to financial frauds, which have increasingly found their way into social media platforms. Next one, it also leads to suicides. Okay. Next one, cyberbullying as well as child abuse. Incidents of bullying and abuse are rising, and young girls specifically are more prone to them. So, it is your responsibility to use the digital media platforms very, very effectively and safely, only to the fruitful use of yourself. Now, moving forward, what are few of the suggested measures that have been given by the author? Is that incorporating digital literacy and resilience in education. Definitely it's important, right? That is, you need to teach your children how to use the media effectively, okay? And students should also be equipped with skills to identify and avoid the online dangers. If somebody approaches you, in a wrong way, you need to know to identify and protect yourselves. And also educated system or education systems, but not only focus on these notebook learning, but also must actually educate you or should give you digital literacy as one of their core curriculum. Next one, you need to regulate child influencers on social media. There are children influencers on social media, right? So legal protections must actually be given to them. Next one, responsibility on social media platforms. That's what I told you. The platform which actually gives you that particular social media like Instagram, etc., must give the accountability of providing a safe environment over there. Okay. Rather than only preventing harm, they should foster positive digital environments as well, and the use of age verification technologies must be there so that it is useful, and it raises the privacy concerns due to the collection of personal data. The next one, global regulatory models for child protection should be there, because there are a number of models that are followed in countries like UK and other countries of the West. And also platforms like, if you see, Meta and TikTok have implemented significant changes in order to improve child safety. The next article that we'll be discussing about is FATF on India Effective Anti-Money Laundering System and Low Prosecution. So this particular article discusses about the recent report that has been released by the Financial Action Task Force, which actually evaluates India's performance and India's anti-money laundering system, and also it has actually suggested few of the areas of improvement such as the financial monitoring as well as prosecution. So in this particular article, we are going to discuss about this FATF, what kind of organization it is, and also about the concept of money laundering. And this particular topic is important for both the prelims as well as the mains examination, and specifically under GS paper 3, security, money laundering and its prevention, which is directly given in your syllabus. Now moving forward, there has already been a question that has asked in the mains examination in the year 2016 with respect to that of money laundering. So as you know, this particular topic becomes very, very, very important for discussion, particularly for your mains examination. Now moving forward, let us understand what this particular article is discussing about, okay? So, FATF has actually placed India in the regular follow-up category. So, we'll be discussing about what are the different categories under the FATF. So, India has been placed under regular follow-up category, recognizing its effective system, that is the anti-money laundering system, but also it has highlighted the need for major improvements. Now moving forward, it is important for us to quickly understand what is this Financial Action Task Force. It is nothing but it is an intergovernmental organization. Very, very important. That was established in the year 1989 by the G7 in order to develop policies aimed at combating money laundering. This is very simple to understand. What is its major objective is that it was actually expanded. That is, the mandate of this particular FATF has been expanded in 2001 in order to include countering terrorism financing. So, and in 2012, it added other efforts also to counter financing of proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. Okay. So, initially it was there to actually, include the things like terrorism financing, etc. In 2012, again, other things were actually added, such as weapons of mass destruction, etc. What is the objective is that in order to safeguard the global financial system by combating money laundering, terrorism financing and other kind of related threats, and it is headquartered in Paris, France. Now moving forward, what is the decision making body of this FATF is that the FATF plenary actually meets 3 times a year, is responsible for making decisions and also setting standards, okay, on how to combat these terror financing, etc. And members actually include 40 members, including 2 regional organizations, that is the European Commission as well as GCC, that is the Gulf Cooperation Council. And here it is very, very important to know that is what kind of statements come for you in the prelims examination is whether India was a founding member, when India actually joined, whether its active participation has been there or not, what has been India's contribution in the, framework or the policy framework, etc. is very important. And in this case of FATF, India has been a member since 2010. It becomes very, very important. Now moving forward, we need to understand what is this concept of money laundering, after which we will see what has been the recent report that has been given by the FATF on India's anti-money laundering system. Okay, so money laundering is nothing but in a normal layman term, if I say, it is just converting black money to white money and actually pushing it into the financial system as clean money. This is what it is. So money laundering is the process of disguising the origins of illegally obtained money. That is, you obtain money from illegal sources and you disguise it typically by passing it through a complex sequence of banking transfers or commercial transactions, and finally you make the amount or the money appear legitimate or clean so that it can be used in the regular economy without raising any kind of suspicion. So how it is actually done? Let us actually look at this particular infographic. So how dirty money is laundered. So this is a typical money laundering scenario where the cash is collected through crimes that we actually saw. This is the illegally obtained money. Now the first step is that the dirty cash enters the financial system. The second is, so the first step is called the placement. The second one is called layering, where the criminals actually try to distance themselves from the money and from the crime source as well. Next one is step 3 is integration, where the money re-enters as clean money into the regular financial system and it is taken for further investments and other things without raising any kind of suspicion. Now moving forward, it is important for us to understand what are the categories under which, under different countries are actually placed. So the FATF places countries into different categories to monitor and also to guide the countries in order to improve the compliance with the global financial standards. The main categories include the regular follow-up, in which India is actually placed. Next one is enhanced follow-up, and the last one happens to be grey list. Okay. So what do you mean by regular follow-up? This is nothing but the countries that actually have largely met the FATF standards, but they actually need some improvements, and these countries are actually reviewed less frequently. And next one is enhanced follow-up. This actually includes countries with significant deficiencies in their anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism financing frameworks, and these countries are monitored more closely and not less frequently like the regular follow-up ones, and must provide progress reports more frequently. And finally, if you see those countries which are under grey list, that is jurisdictions under increased monitoring. Here, countries with strategic deficiencies in their anti-money laundering policies, which have committed to addressing these issues with agreed time frames. So these are actually the categories. And finally is the blacklist. This is nothing but the high-risk jurisdictions which is subject to a call for action. This actually includes all the countries with severe deficiencies in their international financial system, and also the FATF calls on these members in order to apply enhanced due diligence, and in some cases the countermeasures against these jurisdictions are also done. So basically these are the countries which will be on close call and will be monitored very, very closely. Now moving forward, Let us see what have been the key highlights of the FATF report on India with respect to its anti-money laundering policy or the system. First one, with respect to prosecution and conviction, according to the report, despite more investigation, the prosecution and the convictions for money laundering have not increased proportionally. Very, very important. That is, it reported only 28 convictions were actually secured between the year 2018 and 23, and now India needs to expedite, okay, that is, it has to pace up the trial process for greater effectiveness. Next one, with respect to the sources for money laundering, it actually had said that the primary sources of money laundering are internal. Very, very important. That is, it actually stems from the fraud activities. It actually includes the cyber-enabled fraud, things like corruption that actually go on, as well as drug trafficking. So, all these are the menaces in India. Next one, with respect to the terrorism threats, the report had actually stated that India faces a range of terrorism threats from regional insurgencies, particularly in areas of northeast and the north, and left-wing extremism groups, that is the LWE, and most significant threat being from the Islamic State, that is the IS, as well as Al-Qaeda linked groups in and around the state or the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. Now, moving forward, it has also spoken about the beneficial ownership. The report actually flags the issues with the disclosure of beneficial ownership, particularly in cases of investments coming from tax havens. While India has systems to identify such investments, further strengthening is needed. So, these are all the improvements that the FATF is actually talking about India's AMS, that is the anti-money laundering systems. Next one is the NPOs, that is non-profit organizations. Here, FATF has recommended that India has to ensure robust measures to prevent the misuse of the NPOs in order to actually take, the terror financing to another level. The next article that we'll be discussing about is how Kerala has actually reduced the mortality from amoebic meningoencephalitis. So, as this particular article, the title of the article actually suggests, we'll be discussing about this particular disease of primary amoebic meningoencephalitis, that is the PAM, as well as we will be discussing about its causative agent or the brain-eating amoeba, which is called as the Naegleria fowleri. Okay. So, this particular topic is important for your prelims examination under general science. So, moving forward, it is important for us to know what is the relevant PYQ that was asked in the prelims examination in 2011. The question was about microbial fuel cells are considered a source of sustainable energy. Why? So, anything with respect to the living organisms and what are the diseases that they actually cause, what are the symptoms of the particular disease, the treatment, as well as other initiatives that have been taken by the government in order to tackle the same becomes very, very important for both the prelims as well as the mains examination. Now, moving forward, let us actually understand what the article is discussing about, okay? So, Kerala has actually faced a surge in amoebic meningoencephalitis, that is the PAM cases, primarily that was actually affecting children. And the infection, which is caused by free-living amoeba in fresh water, had actually led to significant public concern. And also, despite reporting around 19 cases in 5 months, Kerala had actually made a remarkable step by reducing the mortality rate from around 97% to around 26% through effective treatment protocols. Now, moving forward, what is actually important for the examination is this particular disease of PAM, that is nothing but primary amoebic meningoencephalitis. Okay. So, what is the cause of this particular disease is that it is primarily caused by Naegleria fowleri, but can also be, this is nothing but it is the brain-eating amoeba. Okay. So, it can also be due to other free-living amoeba like the acanthamoeba as well as the worm amoeba vermiformis. Okay. And what are the symptoms of the PAM? It actually initially presents the headache, fever, nausea as well as vomiting, and it gradually progresses rapidly to stiff neck seizures as well as altered mental status. Now, what is the diagnosis challenge is that it is very, very difficult to diagnose due to the non-specific early arisal of the symptoms, okay, often mistaken for the bacterial or the viral meningitis, okay. And also there is a rapid progression, that is the disease actually progresses very quickly, often within a few days, leaving a very short therapeutic window. And also it is highly fatal, that is even with treatment this particular disease has a fatality rate of over 97% globally due to the fast deterioration of the health condition of the patient. Now moving forward, let us actually see what are the difficulties with respect to that of the treatment. So there are only limited effective treatment options, and the standard therapy includes a combination of antimicrobials. However, the names, it is important for us to be very familiar with, though not to memorize them, okay. That is amphotericin B as well as multiphosine. Then you have a couple of other, antimicrobials also like rifampin, etc. And also if you see the survivors, only 11 survivors have been reported worldwide before Kerala's recent success in reducing the particular mortality of the disease. Next, if you see what is the importance or significance and what is the role of early intervention, is that early diagnosis and immediate treatment initiation are very, very crucial for improving the survival rates. And also if you look at the prevention, the public health advisories emphasize avoiding the nasal exposure to warm fresh water, especially in untreated water bodies. Now moving forward, it is important for us to understand about this particular brain-eating amoeba. Okay, so what are the characteristic features of this particular amoeba is that it is thermophilic, that is nothing but heat loving. It is a free loving amoeba which is actually found in warm freshwater environments. Also, if you look at its life cycle, it exists in three forms, either in the form of a cyst or either in the form of a trophozoite. Trophozoite is nothing but it is an infectious form, and the flagellate, okay, which actually has the flagella which enables it to move. And the trophozoite form actually causes the infections in the human beings. Very, very important. What is the infectious pathway is that it enters the human body through the nose during the activities like swimming or diving and then travels along the olfactory nerve to the brain. Very, very important. Okay, that is why it is called as meningoencephalitis. Okay. Next is, if you look at the geographical presence, it is found worldwide but more common in the warm climates, as we saw, particularly in the United States, Australia as well as South Asia. And if you see the environmental conditions that are favorable for it to thrive is, it thrives in temperatures between 25 to 40 degrees Celsius, often found in warm water bodies, the geothermal springs, poorly maintained swimming pools as well as untreated water. Now, more on to this particular Naegleria fowleri is that it is not contagious, that is it cannot be transmitted from person to person, and it only infects through direct nasal exposure to contaminated water. The second one, it has an extremely fatal impact, that is it causes extensive brain damage and inflammation leading to severe neurological symptoms, and ultimately it leads to the collapse and the death of the person. Next, there is rare occurrence, that is although it is rare, infections are usually very fatal, with only a handful of survivors actually reported despite the aggressive treatment. Next, if you see, the current research has been ongoing, that is it focuses on improving the diagnostic techniques, understanding the pathogenesis and finding more effective treatment options. So if you look at this particular image, we can actually see how this Naegleria fowleri enters through the nasal opening, and it actually reaches this olfactory nerve and finally reaches the brain. And here it is contact dependent as well as independent, and how it actually affects the immunopathology, that is the immune system, how it actually reacts. And finally we saw the current treatment using the antimicrobial drugs. The next article that we'll be discussing about is ahead of Amur falcon's arrival, Manipur district bans their hunting. So in this particular article, as we know that species in news are very, very important, and these species are endemic to which region in the world or nationally. These have been very, very favorite topics of the UPSC, particularly with respect to that of your prelims examination. So moving forward in this article, we'll be discussing about Amur falcon, the geographical distribution as well as their unique characteristic features, the threats they face as well as the conservation status, and also these kind of legislations, that is the WPA, Wildlife Protection Act of 1972, becomes very, very important for your examination, and as such this particular topic becomes important for both your prelims and specifically for your mains examination under GS paper 3, Environment and Ecology, Conservation of Environment. Now moving forward, it is important to understand the kind of previous year question that has appeared in the examination. So in 2015, there was a question with respect to that of the dugong, that is nothing but a mammal found in India. So similarly, other species in news become very, very important, particularly for your prelims examination. Now let us understand what this particular article is discussing about, okay? So here, the Tamenglong district in Manipur has banned the hunting, capturing as well as the selling of Amur falcons in order to protect these particular migratory birds during their annual stopover. Also, the district administration of Manipur has ordered the owners of air guns in order to deposit their weapons to prevent the poaching, and any kind of violations will be prosecuted under the WPA of 1972, particularly under sections 50 and 51 of the Act. Moving forward, it is important for us to understand the characteristic features of these particular migratory birds, that is Amur falcons. So these are small migratory raptors which are known for their incredible long distance journeys traveling from their breeding grounds in northern China, very, very important, eastern Mongolia, as well as far east Russia to their wintering sites in South Africa. Okay, so it is one of the stopovers in Manipur. So during this journey, the birds pass through the diverse habitats, and one of which actually includes a Tamenglong region in Manipur, India, which actually serves as a critical stopover site. The Amur falcon also plays a significant ecological role in controlling the insect population, particularly the locust as well as other kind of agricultural pests which benefit the ecosystem as well as agriculture. Now moving on, these species have actually been under the category of least concern under the IUCN, that is the International Union for Conservation of Nature Red List. Okay. And here, if you actually see, this is the image of Amur falcon, and what are the associated threats that these birds actually face? It includes habitat destruction, the climate change, as well as illegal hunting, especially at the stopover sites. Now moving forward, let us actually quickly look into what is the importance and significance of the legislations, particularly the Wildlife Protection Act 1972. It is India's primary legal framework for the conservation and the protection of wildlife as well as their habitats, and this particular act categorizes species into different schedules, with those listed under Schedule 1 and 2 receiving the highest level of protection. Okay, so whichever are the species which are listed under Schedule 1 and Schedule 2, they are actually of the highest conservation status. And for migratory species like the Amur falcon, which are protected under this act, this is included under the Schedule 4. Any form of hunting, capturing or trade is strictly prohibited. Okay. Now moving forward, let us actually look at what does section 50 and 51 of the WPA say. Section 50 actually empowers the officers, the police as well as the wildlife wardens in order to effectively enforce the WPA by allowing them to search and seize the property, also arrest the suspects without a warrant, and detain or even confiscate the wildlife and the equipment involved in the crime. Moving forward, section 51, it prescribes severe penalties for the wildlife crime, which also includes imprisonment of up to 7 years and heavy fines, especially for offences involving Schedule 1 or Schedule 2 species like the Amur falcon, and the repeat offenders face even harsher punishment, serving as a strong deterrent to protect the endangered species. Now let us solve few prelims as well as mains practice questions. The first question reads, which of the following statements regarding the FATF is or are correct? The first statement, FATF was established in 1989 by the G7 in order to develop policies aimed at combating money laundering. Yes, this is correct. India has been a member of the FATF since its inception. No, it has been since 2010. And the FATF's mandate include efforts to counter the financing of proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. Yes, this is correct. And the FATF plenary, the decision-making body of the organization, meets 12 times a year. No, this is actually 3 times. So since only statements 1 as well as 3 are correct here, your correct answer will be option A. Now moving forward, the second question, consider the following with respect to the PAM, that is primary amoebic meningoencephalitis. It is a bacterial infection that primarily affects the liver. No, this is wrong. The second statement is caused by the amoeba nigleri fowleri. This is actually correct. The infection primarily spreads through contaminated drinking water. This is also wrong. So since only statement 2 is correct here, your correct answer will be option B. Now, the third question reads, with reference to that of Amur falcon, a migratory bird in India, which of the following statements is or are incorrect? It is classified as an endangered species in the IUCN Red List. This is actually wrong. And it is protected under the Wildlife Protection Act. This is actually correct, since only 2 is actually correct and the number 1 is actually wrong. The correct answer will be option A. Moving forward, question number 4. Consider the following pairs. These are the regions, and this is one of a kind of questions which is becoming very prominent and important for the UPSC prelims examination. So let us actually match it. Aleppo is located in Syria. Yes, this is actually correct. The second one, Sheba farms in Egypt. No, this is wrong. It is located in the border of Lebanon as well as Golan Heights. And Haifa, Israel, this is actually correct, since options 1 and 3 are actually correct. Only 2, that is B, will be your right answer. Now moving forward, the fifth question, Nigleria fowleri, recently seen in the news, is commonly known as the brain-eating amoeba. So here the option, that is the answer, is very, very direct. So the correct answer will be option A. Now let us solve the mains practice question. There is a need, that is the question reads, there is a need for the imposition of a minimum age to use social media in order to curb the ill effects of social media on children. Comment. So the approach to this particular question is demarcated into the introduction, the body and the conclusion. So in the introduction, we will actually introduce the growing concern over children's use of social media and the proposal for a minimum age requirement. And also in the body, we need to discuss about various challenges. That is, there has been noticed increased online activity. However, there are enforcement challenges on bringing, a total bar on children being engaged on social media. Next, there is also a parental burden, the ill effects such as, on health, privacy, education, that is, they are distracted, a lot of suicides are there, addiction are there, all that can actually be discussed here. And also, we need to give them the suggested measures, that is, advocate for digital literacy education, regulation of child influencers and responsible platform design. And towards the conclusion, we need to emphasize the necessity of a minimum age. Alongside, there has to be a comprehensive protective measure so that your conclusion is actually balanced and it is neutral. So with this, we've actually come to the conclusion of our daily news analysis for the day. So for more updates as well as regular videos, please do like, share and subscribe to Narayana IAS Academy YouTube channel. Thank you.